2 hours ago, Florida tourism officials released data showing the full scale of what Canada's travel boycott is doing to the American economy. $4.5 billion in losses, 450,000 airline seats cut. And Toronto-Cancun just became Mexico's busiest international route, overtaking every single U.S. destination including Dallas, Houston, and Atlanta. The message from Canadian travelers is unmistakable. We're done with America. And the numbers prove they mean it. This is not a temporary dip. This is a structural shift that started in February 2025, when Trump slapped 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and casually referred to Canada as the 51st state. 1 year later, the boycott has hardened into something far more dangerous for the United States, a permanent reorientation of where 38 million Canadians choose to spend their vacation dollars. But before we break down exactly how devastating this has become, if you appreciate this kind of analysis, hit that subscribe button and like this video so you never miss a story like this. The numbers from January 2026 paint a picture that should terrify every tourism-dependent state in America. Statistics Canada released data showing Canadian return trips from the United States by car plunged 26.8% year-over-year. Air travel dropped 17.8%. But those are just the headline figures. The real damage shows up when you drill into specific markets. Orlando has seen nearly 79,000 fewer seats offered in early 2026 compared with the previous year. That is not a rounding error. That represents the collapse of one of Walt Disney World's most reliable international visitor groups. Canadian families, multi-generational, high-spend, fiercely loyal to repeat visits, have simply stopped coming. A Quebec-based travel agent specializing in Disney and Universal destinations reported that her reservations dropped 60% from February to March 2025. Some American travel agencies abandoned the Canadian market entirely because demand evaporated so quickly. Las Vegas reported a 50% drop in Canadian tourists. The city launched a fabulous 5-day sale campaign offering citywide discounts to lure Canadians back. The response was lukewarm at best. Canadians chose Mexico's all-inclusive resorts instead. Florida's Gulf Coast has been hit the hardest. Snowbirds, older Canadians who traditionally spend winters in Florida, are canceling trips even at the cost of losing deposits. One motel owner said, "I've seen a customer drop a $1,000 deposit to choose Cuba instead." A British Columbia woman let go of a $5,000 key aid deposit to cancel a 5-week vacation to Palm Springs. These are not marginal decisions. These are Canadians saying they would rather lose thousands of dollars than give money to a country whose president threatens to annex them. The boycott goes far beyond politics. New U.S. border fingerprinting requirements have raised concerns among 2/3 of Canadians who say the rules feel invasive. One traveler told CBC News, "I don't like that they're taking so much information from us. It's unnerving. Everything Trump is doing is helping to decrease travel to the United States." The cumulative effect of tariffs, sovereignty threats, and invasive border procedures has created a psychological barrier that discounts and marketing campaigns cannot overcome. Airlines are responding with brutal efficiency. Air Transat removed all remaining U.S. routes from the 2026 summer schedule. Montreal-Orlando ended on May 4. Airlines chase bookings, not nostalgia. When Toronto-Cancun becomes more profitable than Toronto-Orlando, planes get pointed toward Mexico. Canadian flights to Mexico increased 26.1% from 2024. Montreal-Cancun routes saw a 24% rise. Meanwhile, flights from Chicago, Dallas, and Atlanta to Cancun all declined. Here is what makes this moment so significant. Canada was the United States' largest source of international visitors. Not Europe, not Asia, Canada. More than 1 million Canadians visit Fort Lauderdale every year and contribute $600 million to the local economy. Duty-free shops at the border reported sales declines of 40 to 50%. One Surrey-based owner said, "Our business has dropped over 80%. We now operate on a skeleton staff of 3 to 4 people when we usually have about 20. The U.S. Travel Association now predicts international travel to the United States will fall to 85% of 2019 levels in 2026. Travel spending by international visitors will drop 3.2%, a $5.7 billion loss. The association cites the Canadian boycott as the main reason. Travel and tourism contributed $2.6 trillion to the U.S. economy last year and supported over 20 million jobs. Every 40 visits by foreigners supports 1 U.S. job. When Canadian visits drop 30%, the employment impact is immediate. Here is where the story gets even more interesting. Canadians are not staying home. They are traveling more than ever, just avoiding the United States entirely. Domestic travel within Canada surged, with 90.6 million trips in one quarter, up 10.9%. Provinces deployed new ad campaigns to encourage exploration. Manitoba increased tourism. Manitoba's budget by $4.5 million. European destinations like the UK, Italy, and Portugal see increased Canadian bookings. Mexico is the biggest winner. WestJet now controls 52% of all Canada-Mexico flights this winter. Michigan has been particularly hard hit. Southeast Michigan's economy is deeply intertwined with Canada. Canadians cross the border for sports events, shopping, dining, and cultural activities. Canadian tourism to Southeast Michigan dropped 30% from 2024 to 2025. The Michigan Chamber of Commerce stated bluntly, "Canadians are very important to American businesses. The decline is not just hurting tourism operators. It is creating political problems for Republicans heading into the 2026 midterms. There are at least 3 competitive House races in Michigan and an open Senate seat that Democrats must hold to have any chance of winning the Senate. Democrats are now using Trump's Canada obsession as a campaign weapon. Some American voices online insist the United States does not need Canadian visitors. 'We don't want you here anyway' has become a common refrain. But the economic reality contradicts the bravado. If the boycott continues through 2026, losses could reach or exceed $4.5 billion. The figure does not include the multiplier effects on local economies where Canadian spending supports restaurants, retail, transportation, and seasonal employment. The U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, commented in July 2025 on the boycott. "Canadians staying home, that's their business. I don't like it, but if that's what they want to do, it's fine." But moments after that statement, the White House issued a different tone, calling provincial bans on U.S. alcohol counterproductive to resolving broader issues. The optimistic scenario involves trade war resolution in Q2 2026, positive FIFA World Cup experiences, and a weakening U.S. dollar triggering gradual recovery by summer 2026. The pessimistic scenario sees tariffs persisting, expanded border vetting, and Canadian fans choosing Toronto and Vancouver World Cup matches over U.S. fixtures. The boycott then hardens into a permanent shift. Most tourism economists assign higher probability to the pessimistic scenario because the factors driving the boycott go beyond politics. Currency disadvantage, border hassle, and psychological wounds all reinforce the same behavior. Some U.S. destinations are trying. Las Vegas casino operators offered 1-to-1 CAD/USD exchange rates. Florida real estate associations actively marketed Canadian-owned properties to U.S. domestic buyers, a tacit admission that snowbirds are not coming back. But financial incentives address the currency component, not the political emotional component. A snowbird named Rena Hans told reporters she will not return to the United States until Trump is out of office. "Why would I want to give money to a country whose president has stated that they want to annex my country?" No exchange rate promotion changes that calculation. Prime Minister Mark Carney has not needed to encourage the boycott. Canadians are doing it themselves. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, despite opposing Trump's tariffs, has repeatedly stated, "It's not the people of America, it's one person that has caused this issue, and that was President Trump." But that nuance does not change Canadian behavior. The anger is directed at Trump, but the economic consequences fall on American businesses and workers. 2 hours ago, the data confirmed what tourism officials feared most. This is not a protest, this is a permanent market reorientation. Canadian travelers have discovered they prefer Mexico, the Caribbean, and Europe. They have rediscovered their own country, and they have learned they do not need the United States for a good vacation. Trump wanted to make America great again. In the tourism sector, he made America irrelevant to its largest international visitor base. And the $4.5 billion price tag is just the beginning. If this boycott continues into 2027, the cumulative losses could exceed $10 billion. Jobs will disappear, businesses will close, and American communities that depended on Canadian visitors will have to find new economic models. Mark Carney did not need to fire a single economic weapon to win this battle. He just needed to step aside and let Canadians vote with their wallets. And they did, decisively, permanently. Trump thought he could bully Canada into submission. Instead, he turned 38 million potential customers into 38 million former customers. That is not just bad economics. That is a strategic disaster with consequences that will echo for years. If this opened your eyes, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next.